Hello again, Matt Bisogno here with another edition of Gold Nuggets. And in this second part of preparing for the flat season, I want to look in more detail at the Draw Analyser and how we can research draw biases in specific contexts. And I'm also going to look at a project that we've done on GG's as a community the last couple of years called horse profiling. Now I've got a few interesting updates on that front that weren't available this time last year when we previously did the exercise, and I'm very excited to share those with you in a moment on this video. So let's get cracking. The first thing is Draw Analyser. You'll remember hopefully from last time that it lives under the tools menu, and we can find it there. But one of the things that I meant to mention last time, and the reason that I'm kind of wheeling back if you like, is because I omitted to mention our course guide pages. So we've got under this courses and fixtures menu item in the top blue bar, we've got both UK race courses and Irish race courses. And if you click on one of those, you will see a page that looks like this. And there's a bit of blurb at the top. There is a search box here if you're looking for something in particular. Let's say I'm looking for Windsor. And by doing that, Windsor appears in the window. You'll have to take my word for that for a minute. Let me just shuffle things around a bit. Okay, now you can see that Windsor is there from the search there. And if I empty that, then everything is back as it was. In order to showcase this, so the idea with preparing for the flat is to get as many pieces of information in our portfolio as we can for later on to use at our convenience. And we can do that. We can either use the race cards and the draw and paste tabs in those. But if you want a broader perspective, if you want to be going into a day's racing thinking, okay, there's a 7 furlong race at X racetrack. I happen to know that, or I believe from memory or from my research that there may be a draw bias there, draw pace bias. Then in my opinion, that's a much stronger position, because you immediately know when you see where the meetings are, you know the races that are most likely to be of interest. So you've got a massive head start there. With 48-hour declarations, you can be well ahead of the game as well, notwithstanding that we need to be a little bit careful with the good old British weather and Irish weather as well. Okay, so let's evidence this. I'm going to use the air for this. I'm going to use air today, gone tomorrow. And if by just clicking on the link here in the course column, this table I should say, actually there's information about the direction of the track, the race codes, the maximum distance on the straight track. So for example, air 6 furlongs is the longest straight track distance. Beverley is 5, and Doncaster's a mile, and so on. The kind of speed, if you like, and that's galloping or sharp or stiff, the constitution, and some tracks that it's similar to. So there's some good information there straight away. But if you, as I say, clicking on these will bring up a much more detailed perspective. So I've got air open here, and there's some blurb here about air. There's also in this in the GG says there's a little kind of a snapshot of what might be of interest in terms of draw and run style. And in this particular case, and there are a few like this, Dave Renham has written a piece on draw and run style bias at air. Now that is going to largely hold true still, but I think the best thing is always to keep your own information as current as you can. And with the Draw Analyser tool, there's no real reason for not doing that. Now, there's lots of other stuff on here, like top jockeys, the next races at the track, top trainers, latest news, fixtures, and all sorts of other good stuff. But the thing that is perhaps most important, in my opinion, when we're doing this draw research is this box up the top here. If you click on the course map, it opens bigger. And one of the things that I think almost all punters fail to do is to have an understanding of the actual layout of the track. So people talk about high draw, low draw, front runners, blah, blah, blah. And, they may very well be right, but they don't really understand why they're right. So they have the right answer, but they can't show their workings out, if you like. If you look at racecourse maps like this, you will see things will become apparent to you. So we know from the previous page that the straight track at Ayr, is up to 6 furlongs, so we can see the 5 furlong start is here, the 6 furlong start is here. We can see that it's kind of an uphill drag and then levels off for the last sort of furlong and a half, which is information that lots of people wouldn't know. So if you'd made a kick for it here and got a bit of a break, you'd have a pretty good chance of getting home. Quite interestingly, I think, specifically in relation to Ayr, is that the 7 furlong trip starts in the back straight, but just before what looks a pretty sharp bend here. And I wonder if that might have draw implications. So perhaps a horse with a bit of early speed, maybe run style is a factor as well. But certainly I would imagine if we've got, let's say, a 9 or 10 runner handicap, around 7 furlongs around this bend, I would imagine it's inconvenient to be drawn wide, because you've either got to drop in or you've got to go the long way around. If you have to travel further, you've either got to be a much better horse, in which case if they do win you can mark them up, or you've got to be very lucky, drop in and hope the gaps come. So let's test that theory out now with the Draw Analyser. So here we are, back in the Tools menu, Draw Analyser. And we're going to go to Ayr and select 7 furlongs. As I said last time, I always use actual on draw. So actual is card is the draw number that's in your newspaper or on your on other websites. Actual is the number that you'll see on a Gigi's race card. Let me just explain the difference to you here. Actually, let's use a race from Lingfield earlier. So if I go to the draw tab, actually I need to find a race where there was a non-runner, which is not that one. Surely there were non-runners at Lingers today. Not so far. There we go, Nova Vida. Right, so if I go to the draw tab for this maiden race, the pace tab, should know by now really, and if I sort by draw, you'll see that it becomes apparent that Nova Vida was drawn 6. So the card draw, which is the draw you see in the newspaper or on other websites, is this number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. But we want to be a bit smarter than that, because we know that the horse drawn 6 is a non-runner, and we want to account for that. We don't want this misleading gap in our data and in the research that we do on the data. So these horses these numbers in brackets, these draws in brackets, account for the non-runner. So the card draw for Due a Rum was 7. But because of this non-runner, the actual draw, he was actually drawn 6 off the rail. Arwag was card draw 8, actual draw 7, and so on. So that's the difference between card and actual, and that's why actual is a much more realistic representation of the data set. So I would encourage you, if you weren't doing that already, to use actual draw rather than card draw. Now on big data sets it probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but it does make some difference, and we want to try to be as accurate as we can be. Okay, so that's actual draw, and we're going to go basically good or faster going. And I'm going to say 9 runners, a bit arbitrary, doesn't really matter. And I want handicaps only. And I'm going to say show me percentage of rivals beaten, and that's actually behind my ugly mug. So let's do that. And interestingly, since 2009, there's very little in it. So if we remember, percentage of rivals beaten, 55 is a good score, 45 is a bad score or a poor score, and 50 is par. 50% means you beat 50% of rivals, and 50% beat you. And as you can see, these numbers are all around 50, almost exactly on 50. So it doesn't look immediately promising. If we go down the page a bit further, we see using PRB 3, which is the smooth curve again, what we actually see, if you look on the left hand side at the axes notes, you'll see this is the 50% line here, and above and below it is 47.5 and 52.5, and pretty much everything until you get right to the wide outside is within plus or minus a couple of percent or 2.5% of where we would expect them to be. So we could almost say that there's basically no draw bias at all over 7 furlongs at air, which I'm surprised by, because it kind of defies logic a little bit. One of the things also to be aware of is that we've got this kind of 2009 to 21 is a big sample size, a big period of time, and track irrigation, turf husbandry, agronomics, is that the right word? Anyway, stuff to do with the grass and the soil changes over time, and so it's often good to basically check that the long-term view aligns with a more recent view. So if we let's have a look at, say, it doesn't really matter, 2018. And if we look at that more recent view, we can see what's interesting is that we see, if we look at percentage of rivals beaten, we see that it's still pretty even, with a slight leaning towards low numbers. But if we look at the actual wins, we see that the middle and high have won much more often than low. But if we look at the places, we see again this kind of evenness between the thirds. The reality is that it looks like there's probably not a lot in this, even though the kind of the PRB chart is suggesting that those drawn very low are slightly punching above their weight, and those drawn very high also, and those in the middle kind of stuck in no man's land. Again, we can see that in the heat map, which is an overlay of run style and draw thirds, and we can see that if you're kind of on the front, as we suspected, you're going to go the shortest route around that turn here. So in actual fact, one of the things, again, when we're looking at the map, we can kind of visualize what might be happening. So these horses that are drawn low to middle, but are on the front, these horses in this section here and maybe in this section here, they've actually got an opportunity to, the low ones obviously they're going the shortest route. The middle draws have got an opportunity to, if they can get out fast, they can kind of cut that corner a little bit. They can get across. If they can get towards the rail quicker than the horses drawn inside them, then they can form a tangent with the arc of the bend, and basically they can carry speed into the turn that those inside runners can't do. So being on the front is the advantage here rather than the draw. We can see that quite clearly all the pictures that we've looked at have given a kind of an even playing field perspective. But then when we look at the heat map, we can see that ignoring the high numbers on the front, who presumably have to do a lot more to get to the lead, we can see that these lads drawn low or middle, and this is on quick ground again, remember, who are getting to the front, are doing a good bit better than average. They're beating 62% and getting beaten by 38%, and 64 and 36 here. And whereas those at the back are struggling, and there is a selection bias to some degree, in that those at the back are maybe the weaker horses. But when we're talking about handicaps, we're really talking about horses that are supposedly evenly matched. So when I'm making my notes on the draw for air, I would have 7 furlongs, and then obviously, like for all of them, it would be actual and handicap, and sort of 8, 9 or 10 runners and above. And I'd break the going down into 2, so I'd have this good or faster, and then I'd have good to soft and softer, because often the impact of the draw and run style is significantly changed by the underfoot conditions. And we can see here that again, it's not massive, but low seems to have quite the edge when the going is soft here. And we can look at that again with the PRB3 chart, and we can see that it's still kind of a bit of a roller coaster rather than a straight line, which is ideal. But we can see that these lower drawn horses appear to have a small edge, not a massive edge, but I'd definitely be favouring a lower drawn horse over a middle or higher drawn horse. And again, we can see right across the board now that there's a strong advantage to those either leading or racing prominently and high, so this sector here, whereas there's 50% is where we'd expect them to be, and then pretty much everything else is in the red zone except for this low and held up. And I presume this is when runners go off too fast on wet ground, stamina sapping ground, and don't quite get home. And these horses that have gone the shortest route and bided their time are able to run on into the best position, able to pass horses anyway late in the race. So I'd be making a note for 7 furlongs, fast ground and slow ground, and those are my definitions. You can use whatever you like. And I'd be checking the long-term form and the recent form to make sure that there wasn't a disparity between them, to give me confidence, basically, that the whatever I perceive any bias to be, A is probably true, and B is represented similarly with the recent data. So that's that, and then I would do that for every course and distance depending on the configuration. So I wouldn't particularly be interested in 9 furlongs here, because they've got a good long, it's a bit undulating, but they've got a good long time before the turn to sort themselves out. So I would expect that to be a pretty fair trip, pretty fair distance, generally speaking. Likewise with 10 furlongs and 10.5 furlongs, where they start right at the end of the back straight, they've got loads of time to sort themselves out. On the straight course, all sorts of things can happen on straight courses, so I'd always be checking sort of 5 and 6 furlongs everywhere. And it's probably worth mentioning at this point, as I often do, when you're looking at 5 furlong sprints around a turn, places like Chester, but other places as well, and actually there's a footnote to Chester with the false rail that they've introduced. But when you're looking at races around a turn, don't be put off by a wide drawn horse if it's got plenty of early speed. So pace in concert with draw over 5 furlongs around a turn is a really, really powerful combination. and often is the most important form consideration. So, which is to say, form is secondary to draw and run style. A horse that can get out from a good draw, or that can get across from a wide draw without having to do too much early, is a very, very strong proposition. 5 furlongs round a turn. Okay, that's plenty on draw. It's well worth doing this exercise, and if you do, I think you'll, apart from anything else, the actual act of going through it yourself means you will retain a lot more of the information than if you read the research that somebody else has done, which A, you have to trust as being correct and current, and B, is kind of, when you've put the effort in yourself, you're definitely keeping more of that on recall. So I would encourage you, if you have a bit of time, to look at some of these and make your own draw and run style charts. Okay. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about tonight is horse profiling, which is an exercise we've done here on GG's the last couple of years as a community, with lots of gold subscribers and non-gold subscribers sending in their ideas of interesting horses that win when the conditions meet a certain profile. And in the past, I've put together little PDF documents with these horses in and the conditions that suit. And I have here somewhere, I think, a list. Where is it? Yeah, here we are. A list of exactly what I'm talking about. So this is last year's horse profile, potential qualifiers, and the qualifiers would appear here in kind of a report, and then beneath that was a table with the name of the contributor, the horse, number of wins, and the conditions as identified by, in this case, Racing Rich, a contributor. Easy for me to say. So these are the wins for the horse, and these are the wins under these conditions, current rating, highest win rating, and so on. And then, based on this information, we can, when these horses run, they appear in this report, and we can check whether we consider conditions to be right, and bet accordingly if we want to. So that's what we've done in the past. I'm not sure if we're going to do it this year or not, but I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. So we'll either do it as a group, or we'll do it you can do it for yourself. So this is the 2020 article that I put together, and I will link to this underneath the video. And I flagged some horses in this article, you can see here, and then underneath I explained how you do it. So let's just do a little bit of this. So step 1 is get a list of possibles. So go to Query Tool and select last 2 years. Select UK or Ireland, but not both, and flat turf. So I'm going to go to I'll do UK in this case, and race code flat turf, and then select age 5 to 7. Now I'm going to actually do 4 to 7 for age. Just want to try and get a little bit more data in the window if I can. And I'm going to choose handicaps because I think, I'm looking for exposed handicappers here. So under race, I want to find handicap and select handicap. And then if I click generate report, that's going to bring back some data. 21,717 datas. So that's a kind of a, the time when I did this, that's what the filters look like, and now they look like this. So I've changed that to 4 to 7, and obviously the date period is different, but it's the same. Essentially, it's the same query. We can then, obviously that's a large amount of data, and we need to get something less than 2,200 winners and 22,000 runners to work with. So we can try sorting by horse, but the likelihood is that's going to crash the program. I'm just going to do that and see if I can prove it. And while that's crunching away, we'll look at the next steps on here. So what I did with this example a couple of years ago is I reduced it by looking only at 5 and 6 furlong races, but you might want to look at 7 furlong races or mile, whatever you want to look at. There are no confines here except the general approach. Within that, there's lots of scope to kind of work out what you're interested in. So what's happening here is actually the query has run, but this is the Chrome browser that I'm using, trying to pull in a row for every one of these horses, which is going to be a stupid amount of horses, and of course it's broken it. I might have known, so I'm going to exit that and reload, and we'll try again. Okay, the wonders of video editing, that's done. So I am going to, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select specifically 7 furlong races. I quite like 7 furlong races. It's not quite a mile, and it's not a sprint distance. So it's a bit of a specialist trip. So let's do that and see where that takes us. That brings us down to a much more manageable number. And now what I'm going to try that sort by horse again, and hopefully we can make this work this time. Still quite a few rows of data. We're going to end up with a list like this in a second, hopefully. And here it is, inconveniently sorted by horse name. So the next thing I'm going to do is sort by wins, which is a little bit of a blunt instrument, it should be said, but we are, in actual fact, in this exercise, we are interested in horses that are winners, and we're interested in looking at their profile in that context. So I've got kind of 4 horses here with 4 or more wins. Porter in the Jungle's won 4 out of 4. I'm guessing his handicap mark's going to be quite high. This Ugo Gregory might be interesting. So what I'm going to do now historically I would have said go to the full, so open up the horse name, Ugo Gregory. So that I am going to do that if I can find him. So if I click on the horse, that opens up the full form window for Ugo. You can see that there. And what we can do is we can just click on wins. Oops. And we can see the horse's full win record down here. And we can look for any commonalities in his profile, and what we can see straight away is the last 6 wins have all been over 7 furlongs. So that's kind of interesting. But so this is how we used to do it. This is how we did it last year. But now we can do something else. So if I click on his most recent run, let's go to this race here. And what we can do now is we can use the Profiler tab to do all the work for us. So that's pretty cool. I'm just going to make sure I've got the entire data set here. And we can see that doesn't look like enough data because it's the wrong horse. Let's go to Ugo. Okay, now we can see how Ugo has performed by all of these different variables, going, distance, class, field size, and it's much easier for us to now put a profile together. So if I click the plus button to open up these accordions, let's start at the top with we can see that he's won 7 times between good and soft, but he also won on heavy. No good on all weather, so you wouldn't want Ugo on the all weather. I know it's only 2 races, but percentage of rivals beaten are almost none, so that is not a promising sign. On on good to firm, similarly, he's got the same 0 from 2 record on good to firm. But if we look at the PRB, you can see that he's run very well those 2 races. So I definitely wouldn't be put off Ugo on a quick surface. So going is really basically turf, not all weather, I think. We can see here that he's had a few goes at a mile. He was placed once, but this PRB number's not particularly good. 6 furlongs is fine, and also 7 furlongs. So I think if we were putting an Ugo system together, or if we were putting him in as a profile horse, we would say 6 or 7 furlongs. So let's actually do this. If I add him, see, I click the plus there, and if I regenerate the report, I've now only got Ugo, and I can do some other stuff to narrow down his. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go get all of his form data. Was expecting some more runs there. Where are we? Runner. Get rid of that one. Oh, I see. So I'm going to make this 2 to 15 again. Okay, so that's his full form on at 7 furlongs. I see. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stick with 7 furlongs. We'll look at the commonalities of these 7 furlong wins. And the first thing I wanted to do was we were going to change the race distance to be 6 or 7 furlongs, weren't we? That's right. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. It's my age. So the next thing is we're going to go back to the profiler and see what else we can establish about Ugo. Race class, has he got a class ceiling? Most of us do. You can see that his winning has all been in class 4, 5 and 6, but he's actually ran pretty well in class 3 previously. So it depends on depends on you really. For me, I would say that I'd be happy to look at him in a class 3 race as long as the other race conditions were a good fit. But you might prefer to say, well, all the wins and the places, or most of the places, have come in classes 4 to 6, and go that way. So, but for me, I'm fine with that, and I'm actually in this video I'm not going to make any distinction here. So just quickly scanning down the list here, looking at field size. There's not really. I'd be happy with any of those. I think field size is not material to this guy. On the headgear front, 6 of his wins have come with a tongue tie and another bit of equipment. So I'd probably be inclined to add tongue tie. Now the way we do this on Query Tool is we go to equipment, which I can't find. Headgear, that's the one. So if we type in tongue, what it does is it brings back all of the combinations of headgear that include tongue tie, and you can't actually see some of these because they're very long. So I'm basically going to select all of these because I know that they involve a tongue tie and something else. So that's that. What else have we got? Weight. This is quite interesting. I wouldn't be absolutely categorical about it, but he does seem to have done best when carrying more weight. In other words, when being one of the classier horses in the race against some ostensibly weaker opposition. But then again, if we look at these lighter weights, that's also on a small sample size good too. So I'm not too I definitely don't want to paint myself into a corner with this stuff. On the layoff, that's quite interesting. So when he's been off for sort of 4 months or more, not so good, but still not terrible. Again, it's better if there's any doubt. It's better to leave it off. June, July, August, September, October. All seemingly better, so he might be a horse that takes a run to get moving. Again, personally, I'd probably leave that out because they're very small sample sizes. You might choose to include that. You often see a horse has a directional preference. Not in this case. His PRB numbers are almost uniform, and he's won on straight tracks and left and right-handed, so he's pretty versatile there. He does want turf. His all-weather run's been moderate. Again, not really much to say about the course profile. Seems a very versatile horse, in fact, although the galloping track does appear to suit him best. And in specific terms, he's done very well, as we can see, at Ayr, Beverley and Nottingham, and York, in fact. So again, when you've only run once or twice at a track, you've got to be a bit careful. So if we could say here, only back him at Ayr, Beverley and Nottingham, but at Musselburgh he's been placed twice out of 3 and got a 76% PRB. We'd be kicking ourselves if he fitted all the other boxes and we didn't back him at Musselburgh. So I'd be inclined to leave that alone. And I think that's pretty much it. David Allen looks a plus, but again, keeping it as simple as possible. We've got these few parameters, and if we generate the report, we've got a really nice little angle, which is Ugo Gregory in 6 or 7 furlong handicaps, wearing any combination of headgear, including a tongue tie. And maybe that's going to pay this year. So there are, of course, hundreds of horses that can be profiled in this way, and Ugo, good old Ugo, is just one of them. One thing it is worth saying is it's worth looking at their handicap mark in relation to their winning form. So Ugo here, he won off 80, went up to 84. So I think that's you can see here it says high OR. Oops, that's his. So he's off a career high mark now. He's only going to be 6th, so he could still have a little bit of progress in him. But it might be that the wily Mr. Easterby wants to get him to a mark that he feels is more workable. So it'd be interesting to see on that. Certainly, I'd definitely be, if not watching him first time, I'd be restricting my stake action, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's too high in the weights now. Although obviously he was progressive before this run at York. At Doncaster, where he ran down the field. So that's Ugo, definitely one to be aware of. And as I say, there are hundreds of these horses, and it's great fun to profile them and to come up with your own list, put them in your tracker with a few notes about the whys and wherefores, and good luck. So that was it. That concludes the flat preparation. By the time you watch this video, which I'm recording on Friday the 31st of March, I'm going to release it sort of towards the end of next week, about the 5th of April. We will have had meetings at Leicester and Redcar and a few other places, Windsor as well. The flat season is getting going now. You can arm yourself with information that lots of people don't have by just spending a little bit of time, if you've got 20 minutes here and there, rather than watching, I won't be rude about anything on TV because different people like different things, but if there's something that you're kind of only partially interested in, let's say, maybe step away and go and muck about with a bit of data for 20 minutes and see what you can come up with. Okay, I hope that's given you some inspiration to have a play, and I'll be back again with another instalment in a week or so's time. For now, this is Matt Bisogno saying thank you as always for watching and for being a gold subscriber or a GG's visitor, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.